type of content together. And those sponsors, I know some of you are in the room, really appreciate your organizations. CenterPoint Energy, Old National Bank, and our technology sponsor, Concept Sound and Light. I'd also like to acknowledge we call them the sponsorship organizations that have conceptualized this thing here, along with the YMCA, Wellborn Baptist Foundation, the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership, and Bridge. There are a lot of conversations that happened quite some time ago for us to get to where we are. So those organizations, a big thanks. Why are we here? Why are we here? Why is this so important? And that might be a question some people ask. And we certainly want to help you get the answer to that. But simply put, the sponsoring organizations felt that diversity, equity, and inclusion was an important piece to creating a strong, vibrant, engaged work environment, but also a profitable company. So we engaged a number of organizations that we felt did DEI justice, and we asked them to come and illustrate the benefits of DEI and also share some best practices with organizations that are interested in getting in that space. I'm proud to say, YMCA of Southwestern Indiana, that we've just embraced DEI as a strategic priority, and that's something that we felt was necessary. And I hope that's the same for you going through the three-part series and all the content that we're going to share. In our last session, we talked about, if you're able to join us, we talked about DEI in attracting talent. Today, we're going to look at the local and state landscape, and we're also going to talk about how you might be able to assess where your organization is. Make sure you mark your calendars, and we'll send out content. In November, we have another part of the series, part 3, and we're going to have individuals joining us that are going to talk specifically about inclusion and engaging individuals with diverse abilities in the workplace. Every part of our series, we've asked a CEO to come up and talk about DEI. CEO whose company has embraced DEI concepts. And today is no different. When we invite the individual up, those folks that know the organization quite well and know the individual, you'll say that, along with me, that they get it. This is a space that they've played in for quite some time. It's not new to them. They'll acknowledge that they have things that they can improve upon, and they've really, really done that over time. I'm proud to have this organization as a community partner, and I'm proud to have them in our community. Jim Ryan is the chairman and chief executive officer of Old National Bank. He's been with Old National for over 16 years in a number of roles. Most recently, he served as the senior executive vice president, chief financial officer. He holds a BA in business administration from Grand Valley State University. And I can tell you, that's my bitter, heated rival in Michigan. Jim and I went to opposing schools in the great state of Michigan, but I won't hold that against you. Community focused, Jim's on a number of boards, and we're most proud to say that he's the chair of the newly formed Evansville Regional Economic Partnership. And he shared his time and talent on a number of other boards in our community. So without further ado, please welcome a husband, a father, a banker, community advocate, especially a friend, Jim Ryan.
Jonathan and I and his family have had some good times talking about Michigan together and sharing some meals with each other. So Jonathan, you just remember Grand Valley is always going to be better. Well, hey, I'm so excited to be with you. This is a great group of folks. Turning up early in the middle of a week to come out and talk about a topic that's so important to all of us. So it's really, really great to be with you. And I'm just going to share a little bit about what we're doing today at Old National Bank. And maybe the first thing I can say, it's a journey. It doesn't start and end ever. It's a long journey And sometimes you go down some roads that you didn't get the results you wanted to get. You gotta retrace those roads, and you gotta come back and keep at it, keep thinking, keep being creative, keep being innovative in this space. As I was getting ready this morning, I always go to my coat and what coat am I going to wear today? And oh shoot, I got to wear a coat. I got to put a suit on. It's terrible. But I look what pins on my whatever lapel pins on my, and I have a few different ones depending on what my day looks like. If I'm more representing Evansville, I have the E pin. Maybe it's a penguin on there occasionally. If I'm more representing Old National today, I go to my Old National pin, and this was a newly redesigned pin. And the reason why I point this out is there's some words on there, and they're leadership values and leadership principles and the things that are important to me. I wanted to make sure that I had this tangible reminder. I know it sounds kind of small, right? And these are kind of trivial sometimes because we wear them all the time, and sometimes they're just there, right? They're just omnipresent and whatever we're wearing. But I actually do think about this every day when I put this on, and I think about what does this mean to me? What does this mean for our company, and how am I representing our company? And diversity, equity, inclusion are a big part of our values. And that's why I wanted this tangible reminder every single day. And I try to look at it. I actually try to look at whatever pin I'm wearing and say, why am I wearing that pin today? What am I doing today to live this out? One of the things Danielle, and I'm just so proud of Danielle and so proud of the work she's done, and glad to be with her today. Danielle will tell you, I'm not very good at checking the boxes. It's really easy to get in these kinds of roles sometimes and want to check the box for the regulators, want to check the box for maybe outside people, want to check the box for your inside people, and that can work a lot of the time. But life is too short for me. I do not believe in checking the box. If we're going to do something, it's because I believe in it, because our people believe in it. Our team believes in this is the right thing to do as an organization. And I think the space and the work we do in DE&I, it's not perfect, but we believe in it. We try to live it out every single day. And I don't have an appetite to do anything that we don't believe in. And Danielle's been a great asset to our company to help us do that. Old National's been around this community for 187 years this year. And, my former boss, many of you know Bob Jones, used to say, we're only as strong as the communities we serve, right? So why DE&I for Old National? We're only as strong as the communities we serve. And so we've got to continue to invest in our communities. He used to say we have a moral obligation. We do have a moral obligation. But that moral obligation serves us many times over, right? There's a financial gain for our company by having stronger communities. Stronger communities equals stronger Old National equals better stock price, keeps the CEO in the job, right? So this is why we do these things as well. The past 12 or 18 months has been an interesting journey, right? It's been hard on so many team members for Old National Bank. One of our largest markets, in fact, it is our largest market today, is Minneapolis, Minnesota. The things and experiences they have felt in Minneapolis aren't the same things and experiences we felt here. We may have felt some of those things, but it wasn't nearly as tangible and wasn't nearly as personable as what they felt in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Our team members continually tell me this is important to them. This is why we make these investments. This is why we continue to go down this path. And I've got folks like Danielle that help remind me of that every day. And so we've been trying to get better. I have this adage, and I tell our team every day, I try to walk into the bank and try to figure out what am I going to do differently today to get better at serving our clients, get better at supporting our team members, and get better at serving our community. Danielle tells me not the first time she's heard that I'm out. Every time I tried to say it, I was in Chicago yesterday meeting some of our newest team members. I said the same thing. Just get up every day. What can I do differently today? Yesterday was yesterday, but let's keep going forward. What can I do differently? And I think about that in the DE&I space all the time. What can I do better as a leader to support our team members? What can I do better to invest in our communities? What can I do better to serve our clients, particularly in that space? One of the things we've done recently, and you're going to meet this gentleman, he's coming to our community soon, Roland Shelton. Recently, he was in Terre Haute, and he was doing some business development work for us. And he had this real passion for working in the African-American community with businesses in particular, and finding innovative ways to build partnerships with them. And I said, Roland, I plucked you out. I'm going to move you to Evansville, Indiana. And when you meet Roland, you'll see he's big as a house. I mean, he's a big basketball player, but he's just a great person. And he has this innate ability to build connections, a lot of times through basketball. He has this innate ability to build connections with people. But I wanted to put him in charge, and I wanted him to sit right by me. He literally sits right down the hallway from me. And I wanted to put him in charge of holding me accountable every single day. And some days it's supplier diversity. Jim, we could do a better job with this. We have this opportunity in Louisville, Kentucky. You got to meet this folks. They could do work for us. Jim, what can I do to help EREP think about how we could drive better supplier diversity programs? Jim, we have this opportunity to hire this person in Indianapolis. The bureaucratic process is slowing down. How do we fix that? And so Roland's really become my squeaky wheel and helping Danielle and others in our company, Stephanie, and all the people in our company that wake up every day and think about these topics and areas, but with this really business development mindset at it. Because it's good business. It's a great opportunity for us to grow when we embrace and engage this community. And so I look forward to the day that you all get a chance to meet Roland. You'll know him when you see him. And he's going to be a great asset for this community, I guarantee that. Danielle and some of our team has been working with McKinsey and Kellogg Institute, trying to think about equity in our company, right? And thinking about and how do we do a better job of looking more inward, and how do we do a better job of supporting and hiring people of color? How do we do a better job of that? Danielle can share, I'm sure, some of those experiences with you here, but her and a bunch of our team members have been going through I think is it called the Kellogg Institute? Expanding Equity, Institute through Kellogg. So we've been trying to invest in our own people, trying to get educated, trying to learn more about those topics. We also recently created a CEO council. I wanted to create a council made up of a minority group of team members across our footprint, across all sorts of business lines, to really be an advisor for me. And I think there's a couple different folds. These are kind of the next layer down team members, right? These are potential high-performing executives that come. And so I've got them all looking at and thinking about topics that are salient to me, and not topics just on diversity, not topics just on equity. These are business topics. These are how can I make better decisions in hiring broadly? How can I make better strategic business decisions? There's so much value and so much insight there. Sometimes it's youth, right? Sometimes just different perspective on their age. And so I've got this group, but it's a really diverse, intentional focus on trying to get that feedback directly to the CEO. That's one of the hardest things you have as a CEO is nobody tells you the truth anymore. And I really try to seek out people willing to tell me the truth. And I find, particularly the lower I go in the company, the more truth comes at me. And this is a great opportunity that we've learned here in our company. Tristan Gregory, you may know Tristan. I don't think he's here today. He's here in the local market, and he serves on that CEO council, so we're great to have his leadership there. We talked, I think Jonathan mentioned disability inclusion, right? We can't forget about all forms of inclusion. And if Ben Trockman were here, he'd be, flagging me down, telling me, don't forget about disability inclusion, right? We all know Ben and what an advocate he is for disability inclusion. And so that's one area we continue to build mentorships in and continue to do good work in that area, in that achievability program we have. I guess just as a few closing thoughts, we're not perfect. We're not perfect as a community. We're not perfect as a society. God knows my wife will tell you I'm far from perfect as a person. But I think if we wake up with that mindset, how do we get better every day? How do we serve each other better every day? How do we serve our community better every day? I think that's what's important. Coming in with the right attitude, thinking about ways to get better. And I think today is one of those days where we're thinking about getting better. We're thinking about how can we do things differently? How can I walk out of here today and maybe try something new? How can I walk out of here today and go, we all serve on a lot of boards, right? We all serve and we have all sorts of leadership positions. How can I take that? How can I get my board, my organization to do a better job today? So with that, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. I warmly welcome you all to come visit Danielle, myself, others. If you want to learn more about what Old National's doing, there's so many great companies here. We're not perfect, but we're always happy to share and be a part of the community conversation. So thank you.
Mr. Ryan, it's kind of hard to follow you, but I'm Tara Barney, and along with my colleague Greg Wathen, we co-head up the new Evansville Regional Economic Partnership. If you don't know what that is, it's the very successful merger that's now 3 months old of the former Growth Alliance for Greater Evansville, GAGE, I've got the acronym perfectly, and the Economic Regional Coalition for Southwest Indiana and the Chamber. So those three organizations are now one. And as we came together, we embedded some guiding principles in our work. And one was to be deliberate about the work of equity and inclusion. And why? A host of reasons, but one that I always point out is it is the path to our future, and our ability to come together as a collection of business and civic organizations and jointly find ways to be more deliberate and more successful in making opportunity available for every individual in our region and kicking out the roadblocks every possible way we can is why we're all together. So I want to thank you all for being either in the room or on Zoom. And I know as many people are on Zoom as are in the room. So we are thrilled with the amount of interest in this topic. It's no surprise to me, but I think that I'd be remiss if I didn't stand here and say that we're happy and thrilled and proud to facilitate this conversation. But it's on all of you, all of us, to find ways that we engage very specifically in moving this ball down the field. I'm trying to get to a basketball analogy, but I've got football in my head. That's probably you two gentlemen's fault. One quick thing before we get to the real meat of our program today. This is not just a placemat. So you see this at your place? Please take it with you. And if you're on Zoom, this is available to you electronically. On the back are some connections, some reading materials, some websites, just a few things to give you a chance to catalyze your thinking, find another tool, pick up a little more reading, whatever you need. And we'll try to keep moving this kind of information to you through our website, our social media, and as many other ways as we possibly can. But why are we here today? We're here today because I've been here in this committee for about 3 years, and one of the first people I met was Danielle Granger. Learned a little bit about what she was doing, and I've been following her many capabilities to influence this community since. And then about a year ago, Governor Holcomb appointed a new executive with a very specific role. He appointed Kara Herring to become the first Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, executive, member of the cabinet, significant honcho, to bring this aspect of public service to the forefront. And I've thought since that time that I wanted to get that woman to our community. And so I want to personally thank Amanda and Mike Rader and all of you that helped us make that happen. But I want to thank you for accepting the invitation. So without further ado, I'm going to get my friends up here. So I'm going to first introduce Danielle Granger. Not that many people need to have Danielle introduced to you, but I learned some things about Danielle I did not know. Certainly she's nationally recognized, and she's a pro on this topic that we're discussing today. And she works as the Chief Talent Strategy and Inclusion Director for Old National. You may not know, however, that she also has a bachelor's degree in business management and a minor in Japanese. So there's a conversation I want to hear more about at some point. But Danielle certainly has been widely recognized and nationally recognized as an award-winning convener, facilitator, and advocate for conversations not just around equity and inclusion, but around collaborative community connecting. She is involved in many roles in our community, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out her huge work for Habitat for Humanity and for the YWCA and other organizations. So Danielle, you're a great professional colleague. I told you I follow your children because both Jameer and Jemiah are always doing cool things, so I have to recognize that not only is she a great executive, she's making sure that we've got great talent coming along in this community. So would you join us on the stage today and give Danielle a big hand? I promised I wouldn't read her whole bio. And now I hope you will also join me in welcoming the first Chief Equity, Inclusion, and Opportunity Officer for the state of Indiana. Governor Holcomb appointed her to his cabinet in November of 2020, right? And she has a bachelor's degree in community and public relations from Purdue, and she has a JD from Valparaiso, so we got an attorney in the room, probably more than one, but it's good to have you. But I think it's so significant that the governor brought Kara into his cabinet to really take on the cohesive role of how the state of Indiana connects with the work they do in putting public policy in place, in advancing the economy of our state, and making sure that all Hoosiers have a great playing field. And so it's grand to have you with us, Kara. Would you join us, please? Have a middle chair. I got to point out, she's formerly from Notre Dame, so I don't want to leave that out of her bio, and she had a pretty significant role there. And she's also been recognized by one of my other favorite chambers in the state, the South Best Chamber, as a Women of Influence. So I'm really thrilled to have you with us, Kara. I am simply going to tee up a conversation among these women, and I think you'll find it very interesting and enlightening. So look forward to it, ladies. Are we all mic'd? So we can hear us? Okay. We sound okay to the back of the room?
Yes. Testing, testing. All
Okay,
right.
that's
Good
what we want to hear.
morning.
Well, I'm going to kick this off by asking Kara, because she's our newest Greater Evansville, extended friend, to tell us a little bit about her new role with the state.
Well, thank you. First, I just want to say thank you to Tara and thank you to Mike Rader. I don't know if Mike's here. I'm not sure. I know he'll be with me later. But so appreciative of Centerpoint. And I'm the daughter of Pentecostal pastors, and so when we go to other places in other ministries, you get up and you give honor to the folks that are, the high ups. And so I appreciate you, but Jim Ryan, thank you for your words. I'm a truth teller. Governor Holcomb has someone that tells him the truth, whether good or bad. I'm a truth teller. But I also want to give honor to Lieutenant Governor Crouch. This is her territory, and I met with her last week. We were talking about some stuff for individuals with disabilities and some of the things that we're going to put together. And she's just been a great partner on this work as well. But Governor Holcomb appointed me in November. I was actually on maternity leave. My husband and I just had a little boy. He's almost 9 months. And we have 2 high schoolers. I'm a little crazy to have that kind of a gap, but it keeps me on my toes. I started officially February 1st of this year. And because this is a brand new position, no one's ever done this before, I came into a blank slate. That can be really great, and it can also be really scary. And so the first few months, I have done a lot of listening. I've been meeting with all of our cabinet level agency heads and others, just tracking, learning about their workforce, learning what are some of the issues that keep them up at night around equity and inclusion. I've been meeting with a number of community, regional, state stakeholders, learning from our friends at the Urban League and the NAACP and superintendents across the state and healthcare professionals across the state and attorneys, just taking a lot of notes. And then I've had to start to write position descriptions for my team and starting to build the team out. I've hired one position, I'm hiring another one in a couple weeks and another one in a month or so, but working on really getting the structure in place so that we can build something sustainable, that long after the faces in Governor Holcomb's office change, this work will continue, because we know we have a very huge racial wealth gap that we have to close. We know that we have achievement gaps that we have to close. We know that we have to create more opportunities for individuals with disabilities and our veterans and people of color. So trying to put this framework into place has been the heavy focus for the first year, and I'm so grateful for Centerpoint and their commitment to supporting that work with us. So that's what I've been up to the last few months. A lot of visits with chambers and other events, but it's been fantastic. I'm incredibly honored to be in this position.
Well, we sure look forward to you unpacking this a little more as
Yes.
we talk this morning. But I would say that one of the things that my colleague Danielle has taught me is that organizations have initiatives underway for periods of time. They come, they go, they stop, they start. But it's really important to assess how we're doing and to restart regularly. So Lori spoke to that the last time we got together, and I know we'll talk about that probably every time we get together, because this is a journey. And I would love it if you would take a few minutes, Danielle, and share some of the highlights of how you look at evaluation and the work you do at ONB, because I think it has been seen as a star in this community.
Yeah, so we do a lot of different things to evaluate our progress in diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have initiated a number of employee feedback mechanisms, such as our annual employee survey, which really gauges how employees are experiencing the workplace on a day-to-day basis. We have a subsection of questions embedded into our employee survey that specifically speak to expectations or experiences with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and their feelings of belonging in the workplace. We also have implemented a maturity continuum, which measures how we're progressing in building our maturity in this space on a level from 1 to 5, 1 being more compliant and legal focused, and then also level 5 being more about leveraging internally and externally the diversity that exists. So that would be when you are at a place where you are an industry recognized leader and really influencing externally and internally a lot of the things that have to do with equity in the community. In particular, when you are thinking about evaluating a program, everyone will start at a different stage depending on what you're working on or what initiatives you are implementing. And so if you go back to the card or the slide that has the examples of diversity, equity, and inclusion listed, if you are focused on a purely diversity representation type of initiative, you'll use a different sort of evaluation. So you'd be tracking things such as changes in population and demographics within your employee base, whether or not there's representation from people with disabilities, veterans, those types of things. So you would be really looking at more demographic type data. If you're really wanting to measure inclusion, you'd be looking more, again, about that employee experience and really trying really hard to ensure you're getting good feedback. And it's a really good idea to utilize the work of an external party to get started there, just so your employees feel free to share things that they may not share with the members of HR. And then when you really get into the work of equity, that's when you are really asking yourself, how are we creating equitable opportunity for everyone within the organization? And so that looks a little different. And so you'll really be thinking about the norms and the policies that exist within your organization and ensuring that there are no barriers based on identity.
Fantastic.
Those are such great points, Danielle. I just sent you both some information I saw from the Federal Reserve about some evaluation they did. And it was very interesting because they found one of their challenges was their Black employees were not seeing the same level of comfort in providing feedback. And I think that, to the extent that some of those surveys that you use, you'd share with some of us, we'll talk about that.
I can give some resources now if you want.
Because I do think that we're all trying to find our way to embed this work in our organizations. And I think that we find that having someone we can ask a few questions of would be a big help. So,
what are the types of resources you use right now?
So I would suggest if you're getting started in this work, there are some templates available through SurveyMonkey, not the actual SurveyMonkey design site, but their actual corporate site provides a lot of resources around surveying employees, as well as Culture Amp. We have used the Global Diversity and Inclusion benchmarks available through the Center for Global Inclusion to help benchmark ourselves as well. And also, even whatever people think about the different DE&I awards that are available, sometimes they're meaningful and sometimes they aren't, but they do provide a good way to benchmark and identify trends that might be thought of as leading practices in this space. And so maybe going to some of those resources, such as if you're trying to measure LGBT inclusion in the workplace, the Human Rights Campaign is a good source for that. If you're trying to measure disability inclusion in the workplace, the Disability In, they have a disability equality index, and then there is also Military Friendly magazine, Diversity MBA magazine. All of those sources provide at least the criteria. You don't have to submit for the award. Just go through the criteria and match up what you are doing and get some new ideas.
Kara, you may have a great professional colleague there to help you as you put together state policy.
I actually might be trying to poach her from Jim Ryan. I don't know, maybe. I know. I'll back off.
So you've been in this role a few months. Do you have a sense of how Indiana is doing, where we as different regions around the state might be really able to start, being good colleagues to the work you're getting underway, Kara?
Yeah, absolutely. The way that I think about this are, what are the things that are keeping me up at night? As I've started to research a lot of the inequities that we see across the state, there's a couple of things. The first piece that keeps me up at night is workforce development with our 30,000 state employees, right? We are first responsible to that population of people. They work for the state. We want to make sure that they're having a positive experience. And so I've been working really closely with state personnel. They do a pulse survey to kind of gauge where we are with equity and inclusion and a number of other things. But talking about the culture, it's really hard to shift culture. And you alluded a little bit to Black employees being afraid to speak their truth out of fear of retaliation or retribution or whatever. But there are some things as a state with our employees that we have to work on. So I've done a lot of small group conversations with people in different agencies. I've talked to a lot of leaders. And that's important. I can tell you, this is practical. Sometimes we just need to listen. And people, they look at me and they say, well, you're a Black woman, you know, I'm sure you get it. I do get it, but I still have to listen to our employees to understand what their experiences are. I was at the University of Notre Dame for a decade before coming and joining Governor Holcomb's team. And that was one of the things that we were very intentional about, was just listening, and that goes a long way. But the things that keep me up at night across the state, where I think regional partners can really play a part, the wealth gap is tremendous, and it's tremendous nationally, but it's also pretty significant in the state of Indiana. There are a lot of young folks that are dealing with poverty and hunger right up the street from us. And so that's something that we're thinking really intently about, really deliberately about with FSSA and DCS and DOC and the Department of Education. Education, achievement gaps. You know, our public school systems are fantastic. I'm a product of public schools. One of my children is in public school. The other is at St. Joe High School up in South Bend. But we love the public school system, but we have to find ways as anchor institutions, whether that's universities, whether that's big corporations, to really start to drive dollars back into our public school systems. It's very important because we see these achievement gaps, and particularly for Black and brown students, at the third grade level, they start to drop off. The engagement shifts. And that is very detrimental to their career progression throughout the rest of their education experience. We are either creating a very hefty school to prison pipeline, or we're going to be creating a very hefty school to higher education or workforce pipeline. These are things that keep me up, and these are ways that businesses and anchor institutions can drive resources and time. The last thing I'll say is just diversification of our organizations. I think it's very important that we not only diversify our organizations, but we think strategically about where we're placing diversity within our organizations. If you're diversifying the bottom part of your organization and you have a lot of people of color in the lower level positions, that's great, but where's the representation at the top? And then, as Danielle alluded to, it's also about the equity and the inclusivity that you're creating within your cultures. And so as I've gone out to different chambers, I'm talking about the importance of having people like Danielle at the table when you're doing your strategic planning, having folks like Lori Sutton, who I just met last night and am in love with, at the table when you're doing these conversations, because it's allowing you to think holistically. And as CEO and Chairman Ryan alluded to, there's a return on that investment. And there's some formulas out there that you can use to look at that. But those are the things that keep me up at night. Those are the things the governor and I are discussing. And we're trying to challenge our peers, our colleagues across the state to really invest in education, in workforce development, and community development. So that's what I'm focused on right now. And we're building out some initiatives, and we'll have more to come soon.
That's great. Danielle, you're nodding your head. So I'm looking right over to you because you want to comment, I can tell.
Oh, no, I think that's all great. I think it's definitely something new and innovative for our state that we can all really be proud of.
Thank you.
Well, it seems, you know, as I've listened to you all and to so many people in this room, we all get very focused on making sure we've got representation, and so we go through and we count, do we have this sector, this age demographic, but I think that path to internalizing the perspectives and the expertise that different groups bring is where we are all struggling. And so I would love to hear from you two women about some ways that you've seen success in that, because I think that that's the next step we all want to take. Would you?
I think to approach this work, you really need a learner mindset. There's a tendency to have a really binary view of this work, and so thinking about it from a good person, bad person perspective as opposed to a growth mindset, and also being willing to unlearn many of the things that we've been conditioned to believe throughout the course of our lifetimes, that's really challenging. And so when you have people at the table who are willing to learn, that's the first thing. I think also engaging an expert, because many times we delegate this work to a committee, people who are just, by virtue of being a member of a marginalized group, we put them in leadership positions over this work, and that can be harmful, and it can keep you from being successful in reaching your goals. And so it's really important to engage an expert that can really guide you through this work and ensure that you're thinking about things in a different way that you haven't thought about before. And so I find that the most successful companies, everyone, including leadership, is on a personal development journey. That has to be key for any organization to engage in this work.
I co-sign that 100%. Absolutely everything that Danielle said. And I mean, the growth mindset is huge. I talk about that in a lot of the discussions that I have. This is something that is critically important. And I'm a truth teller, and that's why Governor Holcomb hired me. Gets me in trouble sometimes, but when you are a CEO or a COO or the person at the top who's really setting the strategic initiatives for an organization, and you out of your mouth say that DEI is going to be a priority for the organization and it's going to be a focus, that is very powerful. But this is what I need the CEOs and the COOs and CFOs, the people at the top, the lead general counsels to do. That layer of people right underneath you, you need to make sure that they're running with that vision as well, because sometimes that layer right underneath can be the barrier to some of this work. And so it's important that our top leaders have very honest, direct conversations and say, this is the strategic focus. You cannot be a barrier to us trying to diversify and create more equity and inclusion within the organization. And then you have to use means of keeping those leaders accountable. And so something that we plan to implement soon, and the governor knows this, is these equity accountability plans for our top level cabinet level leaders, along with the other leaders who lead agencies. We did it at the University of Notre Dame. They would check in with us through these plans, these DEI plans, and they would sit down with the vice president of HR, the executive vice president of the university, and the president of the university, Father John, along with our diversity. I wasn't the diversity person, I was the legal compliance person, but I learned a lot from them. And they would sit down quarterly, and they would check in to see how they were doing with equity inclusion, hiring, recruiting, retention, how are we developing talent, how are we moving people through the pipeline to get them into executive level leaderships. But it came from that top level holding those other leaders accountable. We have to make sure that the people in between all of the employees down below are not a barrier to equity and inclusion. So that's the one thing I would add.
Well, if you're writing down learner mindset, we'll get some key notes out from this, because I think there's some great comments coming out of this. But I appreciate your comment, Kara, especially about the path to progress for our young people and the importance of education. Because Dr. Rashan is here from USI. Thank you for being here, sir. University of Evansville is in the room. Our higher education folks are here. And our folks that are leading in the work of poverty elimination are in the room. Thanks for being here, Amy, and so many of the rest of you. Because this is a partnership. Absolutely. And we always struggle, and this is a question for both of you, we struggle with immediate impact and system change. And those two seem like they're always buttoned up against each other. And we might make progress one day in a bit and throw up a little celebration moment. But we are really, as a community, I'm teeing up what you know a lot about, Karen, you've heard a little about. We've got a regional plan for our region. We've named it Talent 2025, but it is about how we find a more effective way of giving every citizen in this region a path to prosperity, recruiting more citizens to our region, because we've got the greatest region in the country, and doing this in a systemic way. And we want to do it by 2025, but what we really want to do is have a start by then. If we get on a start and can build a system that's delivering more, we're highly optimistic. So I'm dying to hear from both of you. I'm going to tee it up a little bit, because Danielle, I want to hear from you and how you think it's going so far. But I also would love it if you would connect this for us, Kara, with, you talk about economic, community development, and workforce development as being, intertwined. And I think that's enlightening to me, because that's what I think we've got to think about as we think about Talent 2025. So how do you think we're doing so far, Danielle?
I wasn't prepared for this question. Great. We are doing excellent. And I mean, I really truly believe that we are definitely on a path to excellence through the Talent 2025 plan. I do appreciate that there are a lot of leaders at the table with input and influence on creating that plan.
Yeah.
Anytime you're trying to design systemic change, that's super important. Also, just want to be mindful of who is missing from the table. So we really need to take a look around the room and ask, where are the people who are members of the constituency we are trying to serve? And if they are absent, we need to do better work on involving them. And so I think that as long as we continue to take that inward approach and ensure that there's broad representation, because there's no way to successfully design anything for a group of people if there is a lack of ability to connect authentically to the group, or just a lack of representation in the people who are initiating these initiatives.
And I teed that up especially because I know that we're all conscious of how important that is.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to remind ourselves of that every day. Yeah. But you've heard a little bit about our plan. It's, in a word, it's focused on population growth, but I mean that both in terms of physical numbers and capabilities and impact.
Yeah.
I love the way you describe your intentions for the state.
Yeah, well, thanks to my boss, Governor Holcomb, he's kind of put it into those buckets. But another fantastic response, and another reason why we may be talking later to see. No? Okay. Another fantastic response, but I will tell you, you talked about something that sometimes it feels like they're competing interests. You know, when you're looking at the low-hanging fruit and what we can be successful with right early on, and then the sustainable long-term. I mean, thinking about achievement gaps and the wealth gap, that's not going to change overnight. That's a marathon and not a sprint. But there are some things that we can do immediately that actually have positive impacts on those things. And so I think about those in partnership, and I'm looking at my United Way folks, because when I was at the University of Notre Dame, I led our United Way campaign for a long time. And what we focused a lot on was, you know, folks talked about poverty, but we really looked at the Alice families and those families that are above the federal poverty line, but they're really not making what they need to be making to have a very good quality of life. And so thinking about the immediate impacts around creating more jobs for a living wage and getting people into positions where their quality of life is enhanced right there in that moment, that changes the way that a child experiences, if these families have children, it changes the way they experience the education system. Listen, if a kid is showing up to school hungry, or they're showing up to school and they feel very insecure because they can't afford the right supplies or they don't have the right hygiene, that impacts the way that they're able to learn. And so some of these immediate things that we can do with our workforce and economic development actually will show some really positive results over the next 10 years because of the way that these young people will have a different quality of life. And so if we can keep that in mind, that these immediate impacts really can help the long-term sustainable efforts that we're focused on, it really starts to shift the entire culture of a state, right? But it's tough because you have to keep this top of mind. CEOs, CFOs, HR directors, they have to be thinking about this. And I know there's so many challenges. Listen, I sit in the middle of the State House. I'm around bureaucracy and politics all day long. There are challenges to this. But we have to start having the difficult conversations with our leaders, with our lobbyists, with our legislators, with our policy creators to really think about those immediate impacts and how they can help us with that long-term community development, right? The immediate economic development stuff and the immediate workforce development stuff really creates different types of communities over time. And so it's really important. Shout out to Dr. Rashawn. You called me when the governor appointed me, and I just want to tell you thank you. That was very kind of you. We've never met before, but you made sure that you got my number and called, and I am so appreciative of that. It's good to see you. I can't wait to talk with you. Sorry, that's my dad does that when he's preaching sometimes. He'll be preaching a sermon, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh, brother so-and-so, I haven't seen you in 10 years. I'm like, I get it honest. Sorry.
Well, I'll do you a favor and get you a list of everyone that's in this room.
I would love it.
And online. Don't leave my online friends, because there's a lot of people in this community that I think are ready to be disciples in this work.
It's great.
So we'll see if we can't make you your number one pilot community, test space, place we'd like to try things out. I'm volunteering Danielle and Lori and a lot of folks in this room because we'd rather you practiced here than anywhere else in the state. So I'll take that opportunity.
Thank you.
Amy's all
I
over
love
that.
it.
But Danielle, say a few words about the things you're personally involved with, because I know you've been deliberate about the organizations you've chosen to lend your free time to in Habitat and the Y. And I'm thinking it's because they are deliberate in doing this work that Kara's just described.
Absolutely. If you think about the mission of the YWCA in particular, we have a strong focus on not only empowering women, but eliminating racism. And so through that work, we have really been able to impact our community, not only on a community level in Evansville, but also nationally. And so I'm really proud of the work that the YWCA does across our country and globally as well. Also Habitat, of course, involved in affordable housing, which has always been near and dear to my heart because my career started in affordable housing. And so knowing that we are providing an opportunity to build wealth for families in our community through homeownership really makes me proud. It's probably one of the best boards I've ever served on to. So shout out to Beth and her leadership.
So say some words about that path to prosperity through being able to start to build equity.
Oh, yes.
I think that's a message I'd love for our attendees to really make sure they leave with.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the single most effective ways to eliminate some of the issues that we're finding with children in school regarding education, poverty, all of those things. And so if you can provide a safe and decent, affordable home for a family, you are really setting them up for success in the long run. So our community continues to be supportive of affordable housing, which is a great thing. And so as long as we continue to get behind that effort, we will definitely be able to affect that wealth gap here in Evansville.
Fantastic.
Did you want to add to that, Kara? That's all right. You don't need to. I think it was well said.
It's well said. Very well said. I have a deputy chief that I'm hiring too. I know. I'm in trouble.
There's many other talents in this community, so we'll send you a list you can look at.
Well, the one thing that I will say, and Danielle talking about the organization she's involved with, I was with the Indiana Black Expo yesterday with Governor Holcomb, and we were at an event. Actually, it was Monday. Today's Wednesday.
Yeah.
It starts to blur together. We were at an event, and we were talking about all of the different resources and groups and communities. And this is one of the conversations I had. I said, we have to do almost like an assessment of what all is out there so that we're not replicating efforts. And so if there is an organization that does something really, really well, then let's drive our resources to that organization and let them focus in on that, right? I'm such a big believer in that. That's why I was a huge, huge advocate for United Way up in St. Joe County, because they offered all these wraparound services. But I think sometimes there's duplicate work happening, and it really isn't, it's an impediment to what we're trying to accomplish. And so when you highlight some of those great organizations, right, we don't need to have 5 little organizations that are doing all of that same work. Let's all kind of join forces and figure out who's doing what and drive resources there. We'll have a quicker impact and a more sustainable impact. So that's really important. I just wanted to add that for sure.
Well put, and so many people in this room are on this journey of understanding collective impact.
Yes.
Wellborn's doing some extraordinary work in helping us think about how we bring intentional sustainability to this work.
Yes.
So I feel like we've got a lot of good chemistry here.
That's great.
And I think we've got all kinds of opportunity to do better over time. But I'm going to give each of you women the floor because I want you to share with us the most significant ways that we can empower ourselves, because I'm looking every day for, I've got little tools I use. Do I have diversity in a hiring pool? I'm looking for little things to embed in my work. But I think Jim started this conversation off by saying, what do you do every day?
That's right.
And I think getting our lens on the many ways we can progress is huge. So I would love to hear from each of you on your personal philosophy in this work.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You can pick.
Go ahead. Okay.
Someone lead.
Thank you. I'm gonna steal something that Danielle talked about already, and it's having a growth mindset. I mean, and CEO Ryan alluded to this every day, thinking about what can I do differently, what can I do better. And I'm a lifelong learner. I'm someone that from the age when I started reading very early, and I started writing very early. But I would have assignments for class, and then I would have my leisure books that I was reading on the side, and my mom would laugh at me. I was such a nerd when I was growing up. It paid off, though. I think I'm doing okay. But I really believe that we constantly have to be looking for materials to enlighten us, but more importantly, we need to be looking to mentors. I don't care how successful you are or what your title is in an organization, we all need that check and balance. And so I think mentors are critically important. One of my most amazing mentors, she used to be with Aon in Chicago. She's Canadian, but she's back up in Canada with a company called Altus. She's their chief legal officer for the company, and I check in with her. And I check in and I say, am I thinking about this the right way, or am I being overly sensitive because of my own experiences in this country? And she checks me. My mom checks me. My husband really checks me, right? Like, you have to have this growth mindset. And if there are any young professionals in the room, and I'm gonna say this because I'm kind of still a little bit a young professional, but not really. Like, I'm at the very end of this young professional experience. But we have to, as young professionals and young-ish professionals, be open to feedback and critique. That's the only way that we grow and get better. There's, these Generation Xers and Zers and millennials, sometimes we think we know it all, and we don't. And it's really important that the people that have come before us, whose shoulders we stand on, that we take that feedback so that we can become better and be the type of leaders that we need to be once we start to transition into those more senior positions. And so I think all of us have to do a better job of being open to feedback, not taking it personally, but thinking about, how can I use what I heard to grow my mindset, to recognize my own biases, to recognize where I have deficiencies, and then improve myself so that I can help improve the people around me. That growth mindset is critical. So that's my take on it.
I'll just add, speaking of mentors, my mentor always tells me, you cannot lead beyond your exposure. And so experiences and exposure are critically important in this work, and just to be a better leader in general. And so that's one thing I'll say. And then the other is, you have to recognize that the values held by others are just as valid as your own.
That's right.
Period. And so when you approach situations in that way, you could completely disagree or have a different value set than another person, but you have to realize that their values are just as valid as your own, and not exclude them because of what they believe in. And so if you identify and lead yourself with those two principles, it will take you a long way.
Amen.
That is a great point. Give that point a gift hand. That may be one of the most enlightened comments I've heard this morning, Danielle, because I think we all struggle with putting people in a box because of something they've said, something they've done, something they've posted. And thank you for that. Now, you're not getting away from this conversation without some hardball discussion here. So, Kara, you are the new chief leader of this conversation in the state of Indiana.
Lori, I told you. She said,
I promise softball, and this really is. But, we all engage in the public policy space. We're all interested in good public policy for the state of Indiana. And you're going to probably have some early insights on that, and I'm not asking you to share them yet. But as you develop your thoughts on how we can advance good public policy that tees us up for more success, because Indiana has said, the governor has said, we want to grow population in this state.
absolutely.
Will you be deputizing us? How are we going to build a fluid relationship to make sure we can be helpful to you in that space?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Public policy is definitely at the top of mind for this, because we know that we have to use public policy and legislation to really move things forward. Because, let's be honest, this is America, and there has been a history of public policy and legislation that has been a barrier to certain individuals in our country. And so we have to acknowledge that first. But in a couple of weeks, my website will go live, and we'll have some information on there. But what I'm asking individuals to do as I'm going across the state is that there will be a form on there. And I'm going to have those pockets of economic development, workforce development, community development. And what I'm asking folks to do is, as my team is starting to build out our strategic plan that we hope to implement over the next 3 years, and the governor and I talk about this, we both have a shot clock going off in the back of our minds. I'm a political appointee, so when Governor Holcomb's time ends, my time ends as well. And so I'm trying to accomplish as much as possible. But once that website is live, we want folks to reach out to us. We will come and sit down with your organization and talk through what are the things that your organization is grappling with, or your region. And the key tool that we're going to do to use this, I'm partnering with Centerpoint, and Michelle's not here, but we are partnering on what's called a regional equity advisory group. And so we're going to be in partnership with Mike Rader and the governor, plucking leaders from across the state from different regions so that we can meet quarterly and discuss regional equity. what's needed in Evansville may look very different than what's needed in Fort Wayne. And so we have to tap into those leaders that are really connected with their communities to start to build out these regional equity plans that may be focused on economic development or education specifically, or access to health care, or food scarcity and food deserts. So that's one of the ways that people will be able to engage with us, and CenterPoint's going to be my main partner on figuring out who those people are across the state that will serve on that committee. So I'm very excited about that.
Well, then we'll make sure our list of talented people gets to our CenterPoint friends especially.
Please. And if you have diversity officers within your organization, at the end of August, I'm hosting a Chief Diversity Officer Summit at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And so what I would very much appreciate, and I will make sure that my contact information is somewhere, that you send me your name and email address if you would like to attend that. It's just going to be a couple of hours. I'm going to bring in some folks to talk with us, one, about mental health and making sure that when we're doing this work, we talked about this at dinner last night, Lori, you were there, when we do this work, that we are making sure we're taking time away to decompress and re-energize ourselves, and then sharing some best tips and practices, and then networking so that we can reach out to diversity officers across the state. So if you have a chief diversity officer or someone who's assuming that type of role, doing that work, let me know, and I'd love to get them to that event in August.
Thank you. We'll try to be a facilitator of these opportunities
that. Thank
every
you.
way we can. And I'm giving a little commercial now, but it's fair to say that we as an organization are very interested in doing all we can to support this within your organization. So as you see places that we might not be thinking of that we can be helpful, we'd love to hear from you on this. But Danielle, I'm going to you next because we're in the public policy role. Do you see ways we in this region can start working in the public policy space to also tee up more ready progress?
I will say that is not my area of expertise. I focus more on
very wise
on focusing on ways that we can improve employee experiences within the workplace. And so I don't know that I have a good answer for that.
Well, I know there's many people in this room that do, but I think the points you've raised about affordable housing and the way some of our broad-based support networks can make a difference is huge.
Absolutely.
So what did you want to talk about today, Danielle, that we have not talked about yet? Because
I
I've got
think we
5 more
covered it
questions
all.
here, but I don't want to get.
We're at time. No, I think we covered all of the things that that I wanted to discuss. I think the hope is that the audience at least takes away some nuggets and some tools that you can go back and implement, or at least begin to have some conversations with your organization. I am always proud to be a resource to anyone and to make myself available to do that. I do feel like this is a space that connection is really important in. And so as much as we can band together and learn from each other, the further we can go in this work.
Well, I know somebody in this room call on you already, and we ask you to facilitate and we ask you to coach, and sometimes we ask you in a very casual fashion. And so I never want to be on a podium with you and not recognize the really nuanced and long-standing work you've been doing in this community, in this space, Danielle. You've become a really deep source of knowledge and expertise, not just for Old National, kudos to Old National, but the way you've been able to help other businesses embed this thought process within their organizations is huge.
Thank you.
Kudos
I appreciate
to you. And one last topic as we're moving toward wrap up that I want to make sure that we get on the table. We as an organization, I've talked to the governor about this, I've talked to Holly Sullivan about this, are really interested in how we can help our minority, women-owned, disadvantaged businesses in this community not only be stronger, and so I'm taking this point of authority to introduce the new director of the Small Business Development Center, Dominic Pogge, is here. Dominic, would you everyone get to know Dominic, because Dominic's going to be our colleague in this. But how we not only are very intentional about helping that category of businesses to enable and flourish, but how we also get them teed up to be more engaged in the supplier network.
Yeah.
So I want to just close because I see that as a really material opportunity. Is that high on your agenda, Kara?
Absolutely. When we talk about low-hanging fruit and things that we can start to see shift over the next year or two, economic development with the small business space is huge. And so I've sat down and I was sharing this with you. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation has been an amazing partner. I've been meeting quite a bit with David Watkins and their innovation officer, David. I'm just trying to remember his last name. There's 2 Davids. There's Watkins and there's another one. but we've been sitting down and talking a lot about this. So this is one of the most critical things. When you talk to small business owners, and particularly Black-owned businesses, Latinx-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, a lot of times the challenge is access to capital. And so we have to think more deliberately about why these businesses are running into issues when it comes to access to capital, and then access to the populations that they want to buy their products or engage with their products. Oftentimes, minorities, people of color, women, they don't have the same networks as the majority. And so there is an opportunity, I believe, through our small business development centers and through our chambers to start to connect those businesses with a wider population of folks that can engage with those businesses. I also think that there's an opportunity for our banking industry in Indiana to really think about the access to capital struggle for these types of businesses. What programs, what policies can you implement to start to break down some of those barriers so these businesses can flourish? And then there are these ecosystems of support that exist across the state. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of them in Indianapolis, a woman by the name of Kelly Jones runs this 68 Capital. It is an amazing, amazing seed company that helps to fund entrepreneurs who are coming into the space, specifically around tech. But along with the services she provides, it's the wraparound services. How do you help them write a business plan? How do you help them create the network of folks that they need? How do you help them get the right legal counsel and guidance as they're growing their businesses? We have to give wraparound support to these businesses. And then this is the last thing I'll say around economic development. There are some minority and women-owned businesses of scale that exist in the state that are not small businesses. When it comes to competing for contracts, we have to start to shift the way that we think about who we're using, who's coming into the bidding process, and who we're choosing. And that was something we started to work very intentionally on at the University of Notre Dame with our diversity supplier initiatives. Because there are some businesses of scale, they just need that one opportunity that would help to take them to that next level in business. Governor Holcomb and I sat down with 5 of the top businesses, Black-owned businesses in Indiana, and actually they make up 10% of the top Black-owned businesses in the United States. 5 of them are right here in Indiana. And we sat down and that's what they talked about. Access to capital and access to opportunities for contracts with the cities that they're in, with the state of Indiana. They called us out on some stuff with the state of Indiana that we have to work on. But I think if we're creating those opportunities and thinking in a different way about what type of contractors we're engaging, guess what that has an impact on? It has an impact on their ability to grow their employee base. It has an impact on the ability for us to start to close the wealth gap, which has impacts on housing and education and closing the school to prison pipeline and lessening the amount of people in our prison systems. There's a bigger impact that will take place over years if we can get this diversity supplier and business economic development piece right. So that's obviously my high horse that I'm on for the next 2 years.
Okay, could we have a better leader for this effort in the state of Indiana? I want to thank you both for being part of this conversation, but more important, I want to thank you for your commitment to this work and your expertise, because it's not just commitment, it's the fact that you're pros in this work. And we've got other pros in the room too. And so this is something we can all walk away from here and engage in. Yes. I'm just going to speak on behalf of the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership, because one of our very specific interests is in this space of making the connection. So I've already had some of our larger businesses come to me and said, we're willing to mentor some of these smaller businesses. We'll help them figure out how to get bonded, how to line up the insurance criteria to have. So when Kara says access to capital, it's not just investment funds, it's the ability to get bonded or to get lined up. So we've got businesses in this community that have already offered to step up to the plate on that.
Fantastic.
So I think we can start to be a little more successful in that work than we've been in the past. But I'd be remiss if I didn't. We're going to applaud for you again. But first, I want to ask for a round of applause for everyone in this room that's committed to this effort, and everyone that's online too. So you can applaud yourselves.
Yes.
But. And I do want to call out the fact that we do have a committed band of education, social service, business. I think we are really aligned around our interest in not only making progress, but being genuine in this work and being skilled in this work. So intention is good. Skills are great. So thank you both for being with us. Let's give our great panel a hand here. Yeah, thank you, Amy. Get up for this.
Oh, that's nice.
Stand up for these people.
Thank you. Very kind.
And we'll let you guys on stage sometime in the future, but this was a women's event today, so. But in all seriousness, thank you for being with us. Thank you to our friends online. We've got, we think, 120 or 130 folks engaged either in this room or online today. So this series has continued to build from the first to the second. The third will be coming up this fall. It's our intention at the third to hand you not only some proof that some of these things are working, but a bit of a toolbox, so some things you can walk away from that you can start to use as ready tools within your organizations or your constituencies. So that's our game plan, and I could not be standing here today having this conversation if it wasn't for Jonathan and for Pat and for Laura and for Lori and for all of you that have gotten involved in Lead Us, and for Dr. Rashawn, who started inspiring me in this space almost the third day I was in town. I was in town. I went out to USI to meet the then Linda was just about to announce her successor, and literally I walked in. I met Ron when he was going in to talk to the selection committee and be appointed as the new president of the university. So it's been a great journey, sir, and it's great to be with you today. But Jim, thank you for everything that's going on at Old National. Thank you for being such a great leader, not just to Old National in your newer form, but to this community and certainly to the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership. Greg, it's a riot working with you. But I want to say, everyone in this room, find some more folks to bring to the next event, and let's make sure that we're talking about this in our circles and taking some of the wisdom from you two women back into our work. And so helping people from where they are, there's a fair conversation to have with every individual about this work. So thank you for reminding us and hammering that home, Danielle. And Kara, thank you for stepping into a space that I think is long overdue. I've worked in a few states. Indiana's doing some great work right now, and so I'm very proud to know you, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for being here today. Let's have a great rest of our week.